Right, let's bring in now Marwan Bishara, who is Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, and he joins us by Skype from Paris. Marwan, what do you make of the developments at the G7 in terms of the discussions of the war on Gaza?
Well, meaningless is the word that comes to mind. Absolutely and utterly meaningless. Once upon a time, the G7 used to stand for the seven great, the seven giants. They are the democratic powers in the world, the rich democracies. Now they stand for the seven goofy, grave, even grotesque powers when it comes to the question of Gaza and even to the question of Ukraine at some point, because now we have seven leaders who are facing huge domestic problems at home, divided societies, divided polities, terribly unpopular. And at the same time, they're basically, for all practical matter, pushing for a third world war with Russia by this heavy armament that they continuously talk about. This leaves very little room for Gaza. And hence, every time I hear any such communique says something about concerned, I know it's absolutely meaningless. As James was saying, if the displacement of 800,000 people within 48 hours is not grave, I don't know what is grave. If the killing of hundreds of people every day is not grave, I don't know what is grave. If that is limited, I don't know what is unlimited. So really, the other six so-called democracies are following in the footsteps of the United States. That's dictating to them and to the rest of the region their policies that have been for 8 months blocking any attempt at a ceasefire, and now have presented a ceasefire proposal that will probably and ultimately allow Israel to carry on with the war after the so-called phase one is over within a few weeks. So there's nothing insightful, nothing of interest, nothing is actionable coming out from the G7.
And Marwan, we were just watching a press briefing by the US president on the sidelines of that G7 summit, and a reporter did put a question to the president about that ceasefire proposal, and that reporter asked whether Hamas was working towards or indeed working against the deal. And President Joe Biden it appeared that he didn't want to answer the question, that press briefing was meant to be exclusively about Ukraine, but he did say that this is an approach that has been endorsed by the UN Security Council, by the G7, by Israel, and he described Hamas as being the biggest hang-up to any sort of ceasefire. What did you make of those comments?
Well, they're a repetition of more of the same. You have to admire American officials for being on point. They continuously repeat more of the same like a broken record. But what they say is mostly half-truths or falsehoods, because we know for a fact for the past 3-4 weeks since Biden first made his announcement or his proposal public, Israel have never endorsed it in public. We also know that the Israelis have continued with the war ever since Biden made the announcements, killing thousands of people, displacing hundreds of thousands. And we also know that Hamas has given a positive response overall, and they had to highlight or amend a couple of issues that is of terrible importance to them. But that, of course, is dismissed by the United States because the United States is not a credible broker here. The United States is party to the war. It has been complicit in every possible way, militarily, financially, diplomatically, with Israel in the war. It is not a third party per se. It is part and parcel of the Israeli front against Gaza. So what the Americans are saying today lacks credibility, lacks any moral standing in the world. But what they do have is a lot of power and a lot of money. And I think power and money speak loudly, certainly more loudly than principle and international law, especially when it comes to Palestine. When it comes to Ukraine, they keep talking about the principles of this and that and the other thing. The fact that Palestine has been occupied for almost 6 decades, that doesn't even register on their screens.
That is our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara, joining us live from Paris. Marwan, thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.